fight fans, thanks for joining us and welcome to The Weigh-In, the show that spotlights the latest MMA bouts and the topics surrounding the sport. I am Dorian, Mr. MMA Hernandez, and with me as always is Nathan Tyrone.
And today we're going to bring to you the predictions and previews for UFC 186, Johnson versus Horiguchi, which takes place on April 25th in Montreal, Quebec.
And this is going to be an awesome card. Let's start with the prelims, and the first fight is in the 155-pound division. It's going to be Olivier Aubin-Mercier versus David Bulldog McCall. I have to be honest with you, even though I'm Mr. MMA, these guys are up and coming, so I'm still learning about them, but I'm going to give you a little tidbit about them. Aubin-Mercier was on Team Canada for the Ultimate Fighter Nations, lost at the finale by split decision. Okay, overall, he's 6-1-0 in his MMA career, but in the UFC, he is 1-1, with his last win coming in October by a second-round submission. So right now, he's basically trying to start that win streak and get himself on that little snowball rolling. Yeah. Okay, but let's go with McCall. Okay, overall is 8-1-0, but 3 wins by knockout, 3 wins by submission. In the UFC, though, he's only 1-1. Okay, so his last win is in December of 2014 by unanimous decision. So right now, he wants to put himself in the win column too. Both these guys trying to get that streak going. This is going to be a very interesting match, especially since they're both high-level grapplers. But my weigh-in, I'm going to have to go with Bulldog McCall. I don't think that the 2-inch reach advantage is going to really play into part, but more than anything, I think his takedown defense and his grappling background is going to help him basically focus on striking, which he is the better striker out of the two fighters.
Yeah. Well, I agree. He definitely is the better striker out of the two. And the high level of grappling that you're going to watch as fight fans during this fight is going to be impressive. So hold on to your seats. For two fighters that have only fought 2 fights each in the UFC, this is one that we should all be watching for, because both of these guys are highly talented, highly skilled.
And hungry.
Yes, indeed. I'm going to go for McCall also. That's my way in. I'm going to say McCall by TKO.
Ooh, nice. Yeah. Okay. I wasn't going to go that far. Yeah. I thought he was going to pull a unanimous decision, to be honest with you.
I think his punches will take it.
We'll see, because Mercier, that boy's got a chin on him.
He does.
And he took some vicious elbows in his last fight.
He has. But I think that what's true about him is that he wins most of his fights by submission. He likes the ground. He likes to be on the ground. And if McCall can keep it standing, he's faster, and I believe he's stronger. And who's to say that he's better on the ground than McCall? That's not a guaranteed given.
True that. I like that one. Yeah. All right, now next fight is in the 155-pound division again. It's going to be Chad, the Disciple Laprise versus Bryan Barbarina. You guys might remember Laprise. He was the Ultimate Fighter Nations winner. Okay, overall has a 10-0 MMA record, but in the UFC right now he's only 2-0. So he's trying to get that winning streak, going into 3, and more than anything, start to make a name for himself here in the UFC. But let's talk about Barbarina, okay? Overall, 10-2 MMA record, so he's no slouch either, okay? But in the UFC, he is 1-0. His last win by a third-round TKO. So more than anything, both of these guys are trying to make a name for themselves, and I think this is a great matchup, putting the two guys against each other like that. But I'm going to have to go with, on my way in, I'm going to go with Bam Bam Barbarina. Even though he's only 1-0 in the UFC, more than anything, he's a more well-rounded striker, and he doesn't get sloppy like Laprise does. Laprise can let a lot of hits in. After a while, he can also gas and stay on a takedown way too long than he should have, and just break off and try to work it back in again. So more than anything, Barbarina has definitely showed by his nickname, Bam Bam, that if he touches that chin just right, it's going to be lights out. My way in, Barbarina.
Well, there you have it. And what I love about this card is that the UFC matchmakers did a hell of a job matching up talent that you really want to see get together. Here's another group of, set of 2 great fighters, 2 young fighters, 2 hungry fighters with very similar records and very similar skill sets. So it's going to be a great one to watch. This one I had to do my research on, kids. This one I had to look into. I couldn't just call this one right away, though. I am a fight fan. I'm no Mr. MMA, but I'm going to go with my way in, Barbarina also, by decision.
And the next fight on this card, and I love the women fights. Who doesn't like chick fights, right? We got a next fight in the 135-pound. It's going to be the number 3, Alexis Davis, versus the number 5, Sarah Kaufman. Let's start with the more obvious. Davis has won 5 out of her last 7 fights. Her most notable wins against Julie Kedzie, Rosie Sexton, the number 8 ranked Amanda Nunes, the number 9 ranked Liz Carmouche, and even the number 6 Jessica Ai, who's hopefully eyeing a fight with Miesha Tate in June.
Yeah.
Okay. Her 2 losses. So a 16-second KO to the champ, okay, and a unanimous decision loss to Kaufman. So right now, more than anything, Davis is trying to avenge that loss to Kaufman and put herself back into talks for contender status. More than anything, Kaufman right now has won 7 of her last 10 fights, with the last one being overturned with Jessica Ai due to marijuana metabolites. Right. Her 2 losses on her record are to top-tier talent, the champion, which was at 145 pounds when they were still in Strikeforce, okay, and Marlos Conan, another fellow champion and one of the top tier talents, if not one. Let me put it this way: if you go into the list of the top 4 or 5 women in the 135 pound division, Marlos Conan's name is one of those on that list.
Absolutely.
So okay, with her only 2 losses coming to the champion and to Marlos Conan, no matter what, Kaufman, you can see what she brings to the table. And more than anything, Kaufman's been hungry. She's been hitting everybody up on she possibly can on Twitter, trying to get herself back in that cage and back into the winning column. I think a win against Davis, especially a finish, could even put her into talks of facing the champ at 135 pounds. Because remember, even though we've seen Kaufman face Rousey, we've never seen her face her at 135. My way in, ultimately, I'm going to go with Kaufman. I like Kaufman more than anything because she is a phenomenal grappler. A lot of people don't see it, but her takedown defense and her upper body strength is phenomenal. Okay, she can take this fight wherever she wants, and of course she's going to stay where she's comfortable, but when she sees that where she's comfortable is not going to work, she will go to where it has to be uncomfortable for herself and for her opponent in order to win the fight. And Davis has, if the 16-second, TKO victory from Rousey wasn't already an indication, because that was my prediction to everyone. She gets too sloppy. She stays too much in that Muay Thai traditional stance and lets too many shots in. And the girl can take a shot to give a shot, but if you take 3 to give out 1, overall, that's not a good equation. That's not a good ratio. So Kaufman by the win.
Listen. What fight fans love most, other than the fight, is the rivalry. And if there is any rivalry in the ladies' divisions that is, I could say, legitimate, it would be the Kaufman-Davis rivalry. These two rather, have met up twice before outside of the UFC, and both times Kaufman came out with the W. In my opinion, the competition that Kaufman has faced since she's been in the UFC as compared to the competition Davis has faced has not been quite the same. I feel that both of these ladies are going to come in looking for a win, but I think ultimately the decision will go to Davis.
Ooh, I'm going to look forward to that one. Okay.
Getting interesting.
All right, our next fight on the card is in the welterweight division. It's going to be Patrick the Predator Cote versus Joe Diesel Riggs. Okay, look, Mr. MMA is going to try to be as gentle and subtle as he can. This is like an elderly fight, okay? These are 2 guys that at one point in time, if they were going to go anywhere, if they were going to do anything, they should have been there and done that. Cote has jumped around into too many divisions, has jumped around in too many wins, loss, little records and ratios, however you want to call it. Right now, it basically, his record reads like a roller coaster. His longest winning streak is 5 fights, and that was over 3 years ago. Right now, more than anything, trying to get himself back into the win since a September unanimous decision loss to Stephen Thompson. Like I said, I can't really get too excited for this fight. I know Cote, no matter what, is a game fighter. He's willing to exchange. He's definitely willing to change levels and mix it up. That's one thing that I've always liked about his fighting. And he also has some very nasty elbows. Let's go with Riggs. Okay, first of all, this is the guy who took himself out of a fight by shooting himself in the leg. Let's remember that, folks. Okay, his record reads like an EKG meter too, because he wins 1, loses 1, wins 1, loses 1. Okay, and his winning streak has never, ever gone above 2. Okay, if he, let me put it this way, if he stays to pattern in the way he is, this is supposed to be his fight to win. But I think that more than anything, Cote has been trying more than anything to show that he deserves to be in the UFC, still deserves to be on the roster, and more than anything has at least still enough gas in the engine to make some type of form of title run. Although, will we ever see it? I don't know. My way in, I'm going to go with Cote. I think more than anything, he's got more experience. He's definitely a way better striker, and at least shows a lot more common sense than Riggs does.
Jeez, if that's taking it easy, I'd hate to see when you're taking hard on the fighters. Holy shit. Anyway, I agree 100% with a lot of what you said. I think that the most interesting thing about these fighters for this fight is that they're journeymen. Both of them been there. They've done that. They're well experienced, in my opinion. Riggs has a more well-rounded experience, though possibly not a more successful one. Riggs has spent a lot of his time with many different camps, many different coaching situations for Riggs as of late, and so he's really still been in the game, whereas Cote has been speckled and spotted and not so consistent. I'm going to have to give it to Riggs. Also, I weigh in with Riggs by decision.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's an interesting one, because I thought you didn't like Riggs at first.
I don't like Riggs, but I mean, Jesus, what are you going to tell me?
All right, and now on to our main card, folks, where the lights really start shining. We got our first fight in the 135-pound division. It's going to be Yves Tiger Jabouin versus Thomas Tominas Almeida. A lot of these guys, a lot of people might not know them. I've been watching them. These are up-and-comers. This is going to be a very interesting fight. Jabouin has won 6 of his last 9 fights. His most recent win was a unanimous decision victory against Mike Easton in June of 2014, where Mike Easton was shortly after released. Okay, basically trying to get this win streak going right now, and more than anything, definitely hungry. Almeida's Legacy's FC's 135-pound champion, if you didn't already know. Okay, overall has an 18-0 MMA career, but in the UFC he is 1-0. Okay, which I think more than anything definitely plays a part, because it shows that even with his Legacy championship, the UFC spotlight and the jitters that they like to talk, it basically had no effect on him. Okay, his last win was in November by unanimous decision, although I know he would have definitely wanted the finish and was going for it. But all his other wins are 13 wins by KO, 4 wins by submission. This guy is a finisher and goes for the finish. Okay, and like I said, he's trying to keep that winning streak going and carry it on into the UFC. My way in, ultimately, I'm going to have to go with Almeida. I think that more than anything, he has way more experience. He's comfortable already at 135. Jabouin has had problems at times making 135. At one point in time, he was rocking at 145. So I don't know if he's actually gotten adjusted and totally comfortable at being at bantamweight yet. I think that more than anything, Almeida also has a wide more variety in his repertoire, especially with his striking, which Yves is going to be caught off guard by. So ultimately, we're going to go with Almeida with the victory.
Yeah, well, I mean, Almeida with his 18-0 record is very, very impressive. And I like to say fighters like him just don't know how to lose. And by this, I mean, if you're a pro fighter and you're in there fighting for your purse, for the prize, and you've never lost, you've never had to face the day after losing. You've never had to face what happens to me professionally now that I've lost. And that gives you, or rather the fighter, a sense of, a greater sense of confidence, whereas his opponent cannot say that I'm going to go with Almeida. I'm going to go with Almeida TKO by punches.
Next fight, lightweight division, 155 pounds, folks. We got John the Bull Makdessi versus Shane Campbell. Makdessi, let's keep it simple, has won 5 out of his last 8 fights. His last fight was a unanimous decision loss in February, so right now he's definitely trying to put himself back in the win column. And we already know the 155-pound division, out of all of them, is the shark tank of the divisions. A lot of sharks in there. Campbell overall is 11-2 in his MMA career, but this is his UFC debut. And I'm going to have to give you my way in quick, folks. I'm going to go with experience. I'm going to go with Makdessi. He's already been in the UFC cage before. He's already been on prelims. He's been on a main card. He hasn't been on a main event yet, but he's trying to work himself way there. And no matter what, he got the bull the nickname the bull for a reason. He definitely goes out there, looks for the finish. And where you would think that Shane Campbell having the height and reach advantage would play into a factor, I don't even think that's going to even hurt or even affect Makdessi in any way, shape, or form. Look for Makdessi on the unanimous decision win.
Wow. Mr. MMA, man, how I hope you're wrong. Because though it is Campbell's debut in the UFC, let's not forget, he was the champ in 2 other promotions. He knows how to be a champion. He knows what the pressure is like. He's been under the lights, and he's held up the belt. He is not one of these guys who's green around the gills, just entering the cage for the first time or just starting in the sport. He's a professional. He's a bit of a journeyman, and I'm going to have to disagree with you on this one. I'm going to say Campbell by TKO.
Nice. All right, and our next fight on the main card is in the middleweight division. It's going to be the number 9, Michael the Count Bisping, versus the number 11, CB the Doberman Dollaway. Let's start with Bisping. Since the UFC 100 has won 8 of his last 13 fights. He has the longest winning streak of 4 fights since his loss to Chael Sonnen has been on and off again, okay, with this 1-to-1 ratio, win 1, lose 1, okay, but definitely he's trying to get himself back into this win column, especially after his second round submission loss to Luke Rockhold. Dollaway, since his first round submission loss at the Ultimate Fighter of Team Rampage versus Forrest, which a lot of people don't remember, in 2008, he has been also honored again with a 2-2 ratio. Wins 2, loses 2. Okay? But no matter what, he's always been a solid fighter who just can't get over that little bit of a hump and get himself on a solid winning streak. So more than anything right now, he's definitely trying to get himself back into the win column, especially after that first round TKO to Lyoto Machida. But my ultimate weigh-in right more than anything, I'm going to have to go with the Doberman. I like Bisping. I've always wanted to see Brits be on top, and we don't have that many one out there. Ross Pearson, Michael Bisping. I can't even think of any other really famous Brits out there. And as much as this is one guy who has never actually been to the show, actually had a shot at that belt. So always comes so close. And I'm going to think that this is going to fall, unfortunately, in that same category. Between the injuries and between just being so close and no cigar, I think that CB, the younger fighter, is going to be a little bit more hungry, has a way better way to mix up levels. Even though we've seen Bisping handle himself against high-level grapplers and keep it on the standing, Dollaway can handle this fight wherever it goes. And I think the height and reach advantage is going to be in his favor.
I think the reach advantage and height advantage will be in his favor, but we're talking about the Count, okay? He is a perennial fighter for the UFC, never quite made it to that championship match, though, in my opinion, in this little humble guy's opinion, he was robbed from the Shonen match, and he should have actually got the nod against Anderson Silva after that fight, but, yeah, he just got robbed, and so he's had a string of bad luck, like Mr. MMA says, he's tit for tat, win 1, lose 1, but if you've seen his last fights, just when you think Mike the Count Bisping's hands can't get any faster, just when you think he can't get any stronger, it seems as though he has. He looked leaner and meaner and cleaner than he has in the past, and I'm going to have to give it to Bisping by TKO.
Okay, and our next fight on the card is in the light heavyweight division. It was supposed to be Quinton Rampage Jackson versus Fabio Maldonado, but Bellator won a temporary injunction in Jersey this week, so Rampage has been taken off the card, and until further notice, will not even be showing up on any UFC events. So in the meantime, they decided to find Steve Boss for Fabio Maldonado. Mr. MMA is going to hand it over to Nathan Tyrone because when it comes to jobber fights and Mr. MMA gets upset, he just doesn't even want to be a part of it.
And unfortunately for the matchmaking of this card, this is one of the low points. I'm not a big Fabio Maldonado fan. I feel he's a little sloppy. I feel he's had a lot of time to improve his game and has shown no improvement in this humble guy's opinion. And just misses each opportunity that's given to him. That's what I think. Now, this guy, Steve Bossi, if you are a hockey fan in Europe, you're probably familiar with him. He was one of the, I think they call them bruisers. He was one of the guys that are known for fighting. Each team has one. They send them out when they want to rough up one of the other competitors. And he's had over 115 fights as a hockey player. Now, that's just as a hockey player. And those fights, of course, like any fight, include injuries and everything that comes with it. Now, his most notable win was against Houston Alexander, a decent knockout, but Houston Alexander was touted as an up-and-comer, never really got to where he was going. So ultimately, when it happened, though it was impressive, history shows that wasn't too impressive of a win. I've got to give it, unfortunately, to Maldonado because he does have the experience in the octagon. He does have the experience with mixed martial arts. He's just not some guy who's going to come in there and pull your shirt over your head and try to get your mouth a little bloody. He's going to do the job like a fighter does the job, and I think Bossi is going to go down for the count.
And if I have to weigh in, even with everything that my partner said, I will go with Fabio. With his boxing background, he's definitely at least better with his hands, or I'll say more accurate, more with his hands. So I would have to go with Maldonado on that, since I'm forced to.
Twist his arm.
Yep. All right, and now on to our main event. The 125-pound flyweight championship defense. Demetrious, the Mighty Mouse Johnson versus Kyoji Horiguchi. Let's be honest, folks. It's the next best guy in the line. You know, you can't knock it. I mean, Horiguchi is the only other guy in the top 15 with a 4-fight win streak, and against at least 2 of those of that 4-fight win streak in top 15 competitors. But let's be honest. Let's talk about the most simple, the champ. He is the first ever UFC flyweight champion. Okay, although that accolade should ultimately be Ian McCall's. Okay, he has won 11 of his last 14 fights on a 7-fight winning streak, with 6 of those being title defenses. He is already pretty much almost well on his way of being a Hall of Famer. Okay, in Horiguchi, overall 15-1 MMA career, but in the UFC with this 4-fight winning streak, it's been decision KO, with all of it being contested on the stand-up. He's the only fighter out of the whole top 15, like I mentioned before, with the 4-fight win streak. Johnson has already eliminated pretty much 1 through 7. Okay, if we look at this fight for anything else, it's the next best competitor in line. It's not to take away from Horiguchi and say that he cannot do it, but my way in, Demetrious Johnson, he has way too more in his repertoire and his resume to take this fight wherever it goes. Okay, this is a man that when everybody was looking for him to face John Dodson, okay, these were basically the 2 quickest fighters in the UFC that I've ever seen, period. Okay, and to see somebody not only outpower and be quicker than John Dodson, I haven't seen anything for Horiguchi to suggest that he can actually do better or the same. When I thought Barbarina could have done it, especially with his shoot-to boxing and his great grappling, and that we saw how that ended. It okay, unanimous decision victory, and ended up getting turned into a no contest because Barbarina came up dirty for stananazole, I believe. More than anything, like I said, Demetrious has just way too more on his resume and way too much in his repertoire to basically throw Horiguchi for a loop. Look at Demetrious Johnson either for another unanimous decision victory win or even possibly submission.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. You know, Demetrious Johnson is breathing the rarefied air. He's in a position that very few UFC or mixed martial artists get in their careers. That is, that he's pretty much cleaned out the top of his division. If you look at guys like John Jones and a few others, not many. So these guys are guys that, I mean, Johnson has been the champ since 2012. Taking all comers, and he's got a really, really stacked division, really tough guys in that division. Now, Horiguchi is a former champ himself, a Shoot-To champion out of, I think it's Japan. And he's not a slouch. He's undefeated as a pro, and he's undefeated, I think, 4-0 in the UFC. His lightning fast. One thing you fight fans are going to see this with this fight is a lot of leather being thrown at lightning fast speeds. Action is going to happen before they can even think. This is going to be muscle memory type of fight.
So don't blink too many times.
Do not blink too many times. This fight is going to be fast. It's going to be action-packed, and I think it's going to ultimately go to Mighty Mouse. So there you have it. Those are our picks. And don't forget to click subscribe down at the corner and join us in the conversation. Down in the conversation, tell us what your picks are, whether you agree with us, whether you disagree with us. We want to know how you weigh into this. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Weigh In.